Peter Reller, 59 Dunning Avenue. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you. I just wanted to, this will be very brief. Last meeting talked about the numbers associated with the project with the sewer, and I wanted to just sort of come up here and say, first, I wanted to thank the supervisor for his column because it did lay out some numbers. I didn't know that the numbers are current; they're year one type numbers, and I think that that's an important distinction because the other number that we need are some interval numbers, like in numbers like 5-year, 10-year, 15-year numbers, which we have gotten some studies about. But I think this particular plan that was actually presented at the last meeting also lacked those particular what I would call benchmark numbers for where the village and the town would be in their plans. I'd like to suggest that maybe after I've looked at this a lot, probably too much, you've looked at it more, that maybe one of the reasons why it was difficult to actually pinpoint a number here is because we have sort of a moving target. What we're looking at is the town putting an incredible infusion of money into their existing plant. I think the number the supervisor gave was something like $32 million, roughly, and that is a monstrous amount of money. And if you think about it, and they're doing that in a way that is injecting that money right now, when the village is also looking at a similar, some upgrades to its own plant. So I think this is sort of like trying to figure out what the costs are as two objects are moving together and increasing their actual investment in those projects. So it may be difficult to find those numbers. And that's not an excuse for not getting a number, though. What that is maybe an explanation to why this is a premature decision at all. So I'd ask you to consider the fact that maybe what we're doing here is deciding this issue at a time when we shouldn't be. That maybe a better time to do it is when the two plans are actually sort of in an equivalent status, where they're both repaired to the point where both boards feel that those infrastructures are where they're supposed to be, so they can be assessed appropriately. It is really tough to assess how much you compare your neighbor's house and your house, and you're both building your homes. The best way to do it is to get done now. And then start talking about how much things really cost at the end. There's so many things that can happen while that construction is occurring, right? Isn't that kind of where we are now? So it is difficult to find numbers, but that difficulty can be completely eliminated once both plans are at a point where you can actually compare them. So we did get the figure in one of the studies about the 15-year number that keeps getting thrown around about how the village doesn't act, village residents wouldn't have to pay more for at least 15 years. That's a very useful piece of information because what that means is there's really no rush here. You have the ability as a village board, because it doesn't really lie in the village board's decision-making process here, to simply say, not to kick the can, but to actually find the accurate number by waiting a number of years, not many, until both plants are at a point where you can actually compare them, although it's an overused phrase, apples to apples. I'd just like you to consider that in your decision-making. You guys are a great group of people, you're a good board, but there will be boards that follow you, there are boards that preceded you. They also have a lot of talented people on them, and believe me, they can pick up this football and reach the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't going to talk.
That's all right.